In a dark world, remember to be the light. Welcome to Black Swan Revelations. Here is your host, the Black Swan himself, Shane.
All right, welcome. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the keys to the White House. What will it take for President Donald Trump to take back the White House? We're going to be talking about that in this video. So if you have any comments, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Who do you think is going to win? Is this a wash? Is there going to be martial law? What do you think is going on? So I thought perhaps the best way to go through this is to go to the person that actually created the 13 keys to the White House, and then perhaps we can look at it and see if is there any evidence to what he's saying. Is he just totally biased? What's going on here? So hi Andrew. Hi Shane. I know who's going to win. Go ahead, spill it. This is a spoiler free. No, I shouldn't say spoiler free. We want spoilers here. So if there's something that you know that we don't know, feel free to share it. God is going to win. Or he has won. Aha, touche, my friend. I think God already won. I flipped to the end of my Bible and I see that he won. All right, let's jump to this here. Let's just go. Hey, Paul. Hello, everyone. So we're not going to go too crazy. Hopefully, I don't want to lose my audience. I'm a Canadian. So, I like some of this U.S. politics stuff as much as the next person, but sometimes it could be too much. But I can handle it for 48 hours. I can handle it. So let's just go over here and have a look. Let me just, I found this little map. I thought this was kind of cool. So let's go to this map, and this is what we're talking about here. When we're talking about who's going to win, who's in the lead, all this kind of stuff right now, they're pegging it as the Democrats have 226 electoral votes, 219 votes for the Republicans. So Donald needs 51, Kamala needs 44. So what does that mean? So if you go to this little map, make sure you guys can see this. If you go to the little map, you can actually play around with this. This is 270towin.com. And you can actually click. So let's just say, for example, Trump were to win Wisconsin. You see the number go up now to 229. Let's say he won Michigan. He would go up to 244, go down to Georgia, 260, Pennsylvania, 279. So he's over. He's over what he needs. So if you reset the map, you can have a look. Let's just say Kamala. What does she need? So you'd flip the thing over to blue right there. I like to shade it because it almost looks like that's when it's a dark color, that means it is not close. When you see it a lighter shade, that means it's heavily favored that it's for Kamala if it's blue. Light blue, but it's not 100% guaranteed. And these gray ones, these are all swing states. So I put a gray, kind of a light blue, I should say. So she would get 236. If she got Pennsylvania, let's flip that over to blue right there. She'd be at 255. And then what else? Michigan. Flip that over to blue. 270 right there. So that's what she would need. So if I reset it, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. She had those three. It is over. And these are swing states, of course. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is where my daughter is living right now in Arizona. Where she lived or where she lives, there's a lot of look like Kamala in some areas where we were at, and then obviously you can also see Trump signs, Trump bans, all that kind of stuff. So I was kind of curious. So I asked my son-in-law. I said, like, I'm seeing signs of both, and he's like, yeah, this is one of the swing states. So that's kind of interesting. So let's just say, for example, if Trump got Arizona 230, let's say he got Pennsylvania, it's at 249, and then what, Georgia? Still, like, he still has a few that he has to win. He's got to win some of these big ones. I like playing around with this stuff. I think it's fun. I think you should play around with it as well. It's 270twin.com. Go check it out. What else do we have here? Let's go over to the professor that created the 13 keys to the White House. Have a listen to what he has to say. I know for a fact he is not a Trump supporter, so take that with a grain of salt. I'm always curious to hear how these people are predicting things, and I always try and look at, are they biased? Like, I'm biased. I'll just tell you I'm biased, but they try to come across as they're just flat. Like, they're like, no, I'm right down the middle. I've never been wrong, all this kind of stuff. So anyways, let's go to this professor, and his name is Alan Lichtman. Right, let's go and listen.
I got the keys. I got the keys. I got the keys. I got the keys.
We've got the man with the keys here with us tonight. It's the one and only Professor Alan Lichtman. He has correctly predicted 9 of the last 10 elections. And the one he got wrong, 2000, he argues he actually got right since Al Gore beat George W. Bush in the popular vote. So exactly how does Lichtman make his predictions? Well, he says we should follow his 13 keys to the White House. They include things like incumbency and third-party candidates, state of the economy, and social unrest. If 6 or more go against the party in the White House, its candidate will lose. Fewer than 6, its candidate will win. So what are the keys saying today? Let's bring in Alan Lichtman to talk all about it. Professor Lichtman, look, your keys are pointing toward Kamala Harris. Has anything happened in the last few weeks that makes you feel more confident in your prediction?
Nothing has changed. And by the way, I didn't say I was right in 2000 because of the popular vote. I said I predicted the right president based on the intent of the voters in Florida, as I proved in my 2001 report to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. But historians will be debating 2000 forever. Nothing has changed. The biggest myth in American politics is the so-called October surprise. I've always issued my predictions before then and never changed them. In 2016, for example, we had the biggest October surprise. Donald Trump on tape bragging about sexually assaulting women, and a lot of women coming out and saying, yeah.
One thing to note, whenever somebody that comes against Trump, or they try to come across as, hey, it's just because of the data and all this kind of stuff, you can tell where they stand as soon as they start slinging mud right out of the gate. It's so bizarre that they do that, but you could just tell the hatred towards Trump. And usually what they say is things like, it's going to be dangerous. Our democracy will be taken away from us if Trump gets in. He's going after his enemies. I've received death threats, all this. I'm in hiding. Like, they just throw everything against the wall, hoping that some of the stuff sticks, hoping that some of the people that are watching this will buy it. They'll just be like, yeah, man, our democracy, it's on the line and all this stuff if Trump gets in. Meanwhile, you see Trump being prayed over, all kinds of stuff. You see Elon Musk with him, Tulsi Gabbard, JFK Jr., and the list goes on and on and on and on. And Dana White, all these people that are businessmen, Tucker Carlson, influencers that are putting their hat in the ring for Donald Trump. And this didn't happen a few years ago. So you're getting, like, all these influencers can't be wrong about Trump, can they? So it's interesting to hear this guy. So let's just continue.
He did that to me. Even Republicans were saying he was finished. I did not change my prediction of a Trump win, which, Laura, you can imagine, did not make me very popular in 90% plus Democratic DC, where I teach at American University.
Well, you usually have a lot of butterflies ahead of an election, even if you are people getting backlash or otherwise. But you have said that this year, you say you feel like you have I think it was a flock of crows, not just butterflies, in your stomach. What makes you so anxious this time?
Well, two things. Number one,
if that isn't a setup, I don't know what it is. It's like, so tell me about this. They're a flock of crows and all this. I thought maybe she was going to say black swans, but she's basically leading him. So almost like somebody should yell out, leading your witness, Your Honor. So listen to what he says now. Here we go. Here comes the woe is me.
I have never experienced the kind of hate I've had heaped on me this time, which has made me very nervous. I've had hate that's
Muffin.
scurrilous, vulgar, threatening, violent. Security of my family's been compromised. We've had to notify the police. We've had to fortify our home. It's been terribly upsetting.
Terrible.
The other thing is, I believe democracy is on the line in this election. If I'm wrong, so be it. I think being wrong once is not going to discredit my system. But I think if I'm wrong, then our democracy is in very serious peril. Democracy is precious, but it can be destroyed, and it's almost always destroyed from within. And unfortunately,
always destroyed from within. Oh, Muffin. That's so sad that you feel that way. You're almost saying that our votes don't count. Like half of I'm a Canadian. I get involved in this. Half the people in the U.S. are voting for President Trump. Is that fair? Half are voting for Kamala Harris. Is that fair? Like, am I being biased? Am I saying something that's crazy? So by saying dangerous and we're losing our democracy, what you're actually saying is when half of America votes one way, that's it. It's game over. It's game over. And it's interesting that these people, like this gentleman here, this professor, leans on that right out of the gate instead of explaining to us what the 13 keys are, which is what I was hoping for. Instead, it's like, oh, it's so horrible. I'm so afraid. Silliness. Silly. Poor baby.
Trend of this century has been the decline of democracy all over the world, and I'm worried about our country.
I'm so sorry to hear, in addition to what you've described, what you have
sorry.
personally had to go through in simply predicting and using your keys. The fact that you get all the vitriol and the hatred is mind-boggling to me, even though I'm not politically naive to where we are right now. I'm sorry for you and your family on that point. For other intellectuals, though, you and a polling legend, Nate Silver, you've been feuding over whose prediction methods are more accurate. The fights, frankly, have gotten pretty heated. And you just mentioned you're taking a break, taking incoming from all corners. Why do you think the climate, though, has gotten so nasty this time around?
It's Donald Trump, and I've never experienced this before Donald Trump. We've never had a candidate before who has dehumanized his political opposition, called them vermin, called them worse than the murderous dictator Kim Jong-un, who machine guns his political opponents, called for calling out the military against U.S. citizens. Not just criticizing Liz Cheney on her foreign policy, which would be fine, but talking about her facing 9 gun barrels shooting at her. We're saying he wouldn't mind if people shot at the so-called fake news.
Oh, it's so interesting. The guy that's been shot at allegedly twice. He has 2, arguably 3 assassination attempts on his life. The first time in Pennsylvania, which is a swing state, which is interesting, he got shot. So words are different than people actually shooting. And I don't remember him saying that, but the point is, he was shot at. And now you're saying that this is the most dangerous man? Like, he was shot in the face by someone, an assassin. And you're going down this road to get people to feel sorry for you, Muffin, that you're in your office and you're so scared because if half of America votes for Donald J. Trump as president, you're going to be scared.
The press. This is what is different. This is what we have never seen before in American politics. He said he'd be a dictator on day one, to drill, drill, drill. Well,
okay, so being a dictator, he's saying he's a dictator and he's going to drill, drill, drill. Is that what he said? He said he was going to drill, but is that a dictator? Is that what are you trying to tie these two together and say a dictator drills for oil and causes the economy to be better? Like, it's weird that he tied dictator with drill, drill, drill. This is a reach on his part. Totally biased.
Well, drilling doesn't take one day. It takes months and years.
Oh, you're correcting him on when he said we're going to be drilling on day one. He's not saying it takes one day to drill. This is a professor. This is a professor. He thought Donald Trump said literally it's going to take one day to drill, and on day one, we're going to drill. That's what he thought that Donald Trump meant. When Trump was saying on day one, this is what we're going to do, is we're going to open up. We're going to start drilling. What do you think that means? Like, if you're sitting across from another person at a coffee shop, you're just sitting there and somebody says, hey, you know what? I think on day one, Donald Trump is just going to open this up. We're going to start drilling. Nobody in their right mind would go, oh, you mean like on the White House lawn? Like they're going to start drilling that day right there, one day? Doesn't Trump know it takes 30 days to drill oil? It's not what Trump was saying. And this guy is kind of looking like an idiot, a little bit of an idiot. Let's continue.
Years, and no dictator in the history of the world has ever relinquished power after being a dictator on day one. And by
okay, that doesn't make sense either. No dictator on day one. Again, if we're looking at dictators, no dictator has ever given back his power on day one. What are you even talking about? They're dictators. That's the whole point. When they're dictating, they're crushing people. They don't hand it back. Like, it's weird. I don't understand what he's trying to say here. Dictators don't give back on day one. Genghis Khan didn't stop on day one. It's kind of weird.
By the way, I didn't like Trump any better in 2016 when I predicted his win.
There you go.
Predictions are totally nonpartisan. I predicted the two most conservative presidents of our time. My first prediction was of Ronald Reagan in April 1982.
I remember going to sleep, and it looked like Donald Trump was losing because they turned everything, I believe it was blue. Everything was going blue for Hillary, and it was almost like all these news outlets were saying she won. Then in 2016 or 2020, same thing, but this time it looked like Trump had it in the bag, and I went to sleep, and then it was reversed the next day. So it's just kind of interesting how things unfold, like almost the next day.
When 60% of Americans said he was too old to run again.
And here we are at the 11th hour practically, and your predictions, you say, stand, and you're not changing your mind on what you've got from these different keys. I'll be really intrigued to see what happens this coming Tuesday, as frankly the entire globe is as well. Alan Lichtman, always a pleasure to pick your brain. Thank you.
My pleasure. And the keys are the North Star of prediction. They don't change.
Donald Trump delivering a dark closing message, the former president casting doubt on.
All right, so let's go over to the predictions now. Enough of that. Totally biased though. It's crazy. It's crazy. Drill, drill, drill. Flash the 666 hand sign. The 666 demon juice. I don't know what you're talking about. All right, let's go to the prediction here. Let me go over here. And let's go to Wolf Blitzer here. So 1 second. Right here. There we go.
David Shallian is over at the Magic Wall for us to break down which states Trump and Harris need to win the White House.
Wolf, here it is. The path to 270. The red states are in Trump's column. The blue states are in Harris's column for the purpose of this exercise. And we've got 7 remaining yellow toss-up battleground states. And as you know, those battleground states are razor thin. Look at these are a poll of polls in the battleground states. No clear leader in any of them, in any of these battleground states. So this is razor thin. So what is the path to victory for each candidate? Well, the Harris campaign will say that their best, most direct path to 270 electoral votes is through the blue wall. If she were to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, she'd be at 270 electoral votes and the next president. But what if Donald Trump repeats his 2016 victory in Pennsylvania? Then Harris drops down to 251, and she has to go hunting in the Sun Belt to find some more votes. Certainly, if she were able to flip North Carolina from red to blue this time, that would get her knocking on the door to 270. And then maybe Nevada behaves like it has for Democrats in recent cycles, and that would put Harris over the top in that scenario. What about Donald Trump's path? Well, let's reset the map. 7 yellow battleground states. And Donald Trump's most direct path is to hang on to North Carolina. That is the state he won by the narrowest margin 4 years ago. In fact, it's the only state he won of the 7 battleground states. And let's say he flips Georgia back. You'll recall he famously lost it by just fewer than 12,000 votes. So let's say that ends up back in his column. And let's say he does get that Pennsylvania victory repeated from 2016. That's it. He'll be at 270 electoral votes. He doesn't need any of the rest of the battleground states. But what if Harris does pull it out in Pennsylvania? Then where does Donald Trump go for the next 19 electoral votes? Well, even if he were to win Nevada and Arizona out west, that still would not get him to 270. He would need at least one of the other remaining so-called blue wall states, such as Michigan, and that would do the trick and get him over the top.
Are you a professional looking to...
That's interesting. So it looks like Michigan is a key. Was it Michigan or Pennsylvania? I think Pennsylvania is key. Arizona would be nice, of course. What you guys do things a little bit different in the United States when it comes to this whole voting thing. In Canada, it's different for us. Like we vote for people in our riding. So let's just say there's 3 political parties in Cochrane. If let's say for the Conservatives, whoever the guy is, if he wins, he actually gets to go to Parliament and he will represent Cochrane now because he won. That's not the way it works in the United States. Let's just use California, for example. They have, like, I believe it's 53 electoral representatives, if you will, for that state. When people are voting, and it would never flip over to Trump, but let's just use that for the sake of argument. If California, maybe I can just show this here. Let me just go to the map, and maybe this will make more sense. I think this is what gets people confused sometimes. If you go over to California, it says it's actually 54. So let's just say, for example, the votes are very close in California. because I don't know what the population of California is, and I don't know how many people are going to be voting. Let's just use a loose number. Let's say there was 1 million people voting for Joe Biden. If 999,999 people voted for Donald Trump, Biden would win that whole state of California, all 54 of the electoral personnel, if you will. Biden gets them all. It's not like you get portions here and there. They all go over. So what that means is, if, let's just say, you have 54 electoral personnel, I don't know how else to say it, for the Republican Party, and then 54 for the Democrats. If Joe wins, these 54 are in, and they basically pledge allegiance, if you will, to their representative, which would be Joe Biden, or in this case, Kamala Harris. It's all 54. But if Trump gets in, or if, let's say, it flipped over to the Republicans, they would get all 54 of the electoral count. All 54 would go to Trump, meaning it looks like you guys have 54 on one side on standby, and then 54 in the other political party on standby, and whoever wins, then they show up at the White House and they cast their vote and they say, we support Kamala Harris as our president. So that's why it's a little bit different in the United States, because in Canada, we don't vote like that. We have a majority party. We can have a minority party where people are, all they have to do is, let's just say, for example, the Conservatives, all they have to do is just get more votes than the person that they're going against to be able to form a government. That's it. It's not like that in the United States. And I think this is confusing for a lot of people. It's confusing for me for a while as a Canadian. Like, I'm trying to figure out what's the point of voting if everybody goes over. But if you have more votes in the United States of America, for example, for Donald Trump, you can still lose the election. That's the crazy part. In Canada, it's a little bit different. So if you have, again, I don't know how many, what do you have, 250, 260? If you have it split down the middle and say Trump comes in a little bit more as the popular vote, you could still lose, because it all comes down to this electoral count right here. I'm going to show this to you, which is quite fascinating when you think about it. You can have more people vote for Donald Trump, but if he doesn't win these key states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Wisconsin, if he doesn't win those, it doesn't matter how many votes, because it comes down to the electoral count. And that's quite fascinating to me. I never knew that that's how you guys work this stuff out. So it is very important, obviously, that you vote. But I think where it's more important is the states that are considered a swing state, where it could go either way. It's very important. If you're living in Arizona, it's very important for you to vote. Nevada, very important. Wisconsin, very important. Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. These are the most important, because it's going to be very difficult. Like, it'll be a shock if California flipped over to Donald Trump. Like, it'll just shock everyone. So the likelihood of that happening, or the likelihood of Texas going blue, is almost zero. It's not impossible, but it's almost zero. Like, you can say 10% or whatever. I think that's where the battle is. And that's why you always get Wisconsin, Minnesota. Like, Trump spends a lot of time there to try and win these people over. It's quite fascinating, quite fascinating. So let's go over to another, this is Fox now, putting their spin. And I actually didn't mind the road to 270 with what CNN, whoever that guy was that was speaking. It actually seemed pretty fair. Like this, it seems pretty obvious. Like if Kamala gets the blue wall, she's in. So, but let's just hear what these guys have to say.
A historically close race just 3 days away as Trump and Harris battle it out to see who can reach 270 electoral votes. Griff is over at the touchscreen with more on how it could all play out.
Here we go. And Mary Catherine, we hear so much about the blue wall. But before I do that, one thing you've heard about is the single electoral vote in Nebraska. It's Omaha, it's the city, and it has traditionally gone blue. And most people are basing their path to 270, giving that one to Harris. So I'm going to do so now. Starting with the blue wall, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. First, let me show you the electoral numbers. So you've got 19 for Pennsylvania, 15 Michigan, 10 Wisconsin. Georgia and North Carolina are 16, Arizona 11, Nevada 6. You can see, obviously, Pennsylvania is the big prize. If Harris wins the blue wall, the famed blue wall, you can see, boom, 270, she gets there. Now, take it out, and let's see if Trump won the blue wall, which he did in 2016, you would see the math add up, and he doesn't quite get there. He's going to need more. Add in a North Carolina, he gets there. Add in a Georgia, he gets there. Now, I do want to take you back to one thing, though, and that is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, the blue wall. But Georgia and Arizona, traditionally, the swing states have swung together. In 26, they all went red. In 2020, they all went blue. But it is the strategy that Trump has of North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. In that Sun Belt, if he can get that, all he needs to do is to pick off one of the famed blue wall. And that's what we're looking for to see this year. Will the blue wall fracture? You have to go back to 1988 when Dukakis won Wisconsin but lost Michigan and Pennsylvania, when the blue wall didn't hold, with that one exception in 2016 when Trump carried all three of those. Now, let me go back, if I can, though, to the map and look at the states. Let's go with Katie, give me a state you're watching that you really want to know what's going on.
I am watching Georgia because it is a newer swing state, typically more Republican reliable.
Yep.
But President Trump has lots of unfinished business there. Brian Kemp is a very popular Republican governor. There are 2 Democratic senators. And of course, Georgia has been passing all of this voter integrity legislation, which has given us this massive 55% early voter turnout. So, as I was saying, Biden last time, Trump has.
Well, and look at how close, 0.2%. It was literally such a tight 10,000 vote count roughly. But then you go to 2016, you can see how much by 5.7 points that Clinton won. Now, let me take it back. And Guy, give me a state that you're watching here. Hold on. Let me go back to this as I knock through this map. Give me a state you're watching.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona is also interesting if we're talking about the Sun Belt states, because that was a red state. It went blue.
I'm paying attention to Arizona as well.
Just barely for Biden last time. Early voting looking pretty good for Republicans so far. Does he flip it back?
Well, that is exactly the question. And to your point, 0.3% in 2020. Look at 2016, what happened there. And it was a much larger one. I'm just going to take this back, if I can, to the main map. And Mary Catherine, give me a state and we'll round this out.
I'm looking at my home state of North Carolina. That's where Trump won in 2020 by about 75K votes. And there's some good news. Well, Trump is there a lot, which suggests maybe he's not totally confident about it. But Kamala Harris has pulled ads at one point, and some really good news for democracy in general is Western North Carolina is keeping up with its early voting and surpassing it from 2020. So those hard hit counties are really doing a great job.
That was a big question. I was in Western North Carolina covering it, and they were worried about the election. Obviously, it's going there, but it was obviously the results. You're looking 1.5 points roughly in 2020, and in 2016, it was 3.8 percentage points. So North Carolina is one of those that remained red. We will see what happens. It's anybody's guess of where these states go, but if the swing states swing one way or another, we may have decisive results, although I'm not sure we'll get them as Katie predicts on Tuesday night.
All right, so that's their perspective as well, which is It's going to be tight. Obviously, it's going to be tight. But again, I think you have to look at what's going on right here. Let me just go to this tab, back to this tab. Man, I love this little map here. 270towin.com. Go check it out. I like playing around with this. So it seems like I'll be surprised if Pennsylvania goes over to Kamala. I will. I'll be surprised. I think it's going to go to Trump. What does that look like? 245 if Kamala gets it. I just think because he was basically almost assassinated and he spent a lot of time there, I think he's going to get that one. That could be just me. I'm a Canadian. What can I say? So let's just give that to Donald. Is that 238? And then what else does he have to get? North Carolina and Georgia. Would that do it? Yeah. North Carolina and Georgia and Pennsylvania. And like what's his name said, let me just reset this here. If you go through the Sun Belt and you get, would this do it for him? Boom, boom. 268, that won't do it for him. He has to have, let me just reset. He has to have one of these blues, one of the blue wall. I think that would help them out. Pretty sure he's going to get these. If he had Pennsylvania, he's in, just like that. He doesn't need to do anything else. He is in. That's what I'm going to be watching for. And of course, the polls start closing in the east. And as you get moving over to the west, they start counting. Hopefully it doesn't take days to count. Like, that'd be ridiculous to have to wait till December for an actual count. I'm hoping that they're not going to have to do a recount and all this kind of stuff. But if I were to guess, I would guess he's going to get Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. It'll be a shocker if he got Wisconsin or Michigan. I think it'll be a shocker. But hey, you never know. You never know. Is California going to flip? I don't think so. I doubt it. What would happen if Donald won the Dawn? If he won California? If that flipped over, what would that look like? 273. He just needs to win California and it's over. Anyways, crazy, right? All right, so now let's go to the comments here. And I want to talk about these 13 keys this Alan dude brought up. It's kind of biased, but I think you can use it for both political parties. I think it's safe to use for both Kamala, and you can use it for Donald Trump. So let's just see what people are saying here. Who do you think is going to win? Who do you think? What do you think is going on here? Let's see here. Pennsylvania is really, really tight. Trump has a 0.1% lead. Really, really tight. Yeah, that's very close. Very close. Pennsylvania. This is from Donegal. I live in Pennsylvania, and the rural counties always support red, whereas Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Erie support the blue. Interesting. Yeah, split right down the middle. And again, if it's so crazy that you can just get a small percentage of someone, and like say Donald Trump wins, all of those electoral counts go to him, or vice versa. If Kamala wins, they all go. It doesn't matter if it's split. That means nothing in America if it's split down the middle. That's zero. It means zero if America is divided after the election, because that's not what counts. It's the electoral counts, the electoral representatives. That's what actually matters. So it's interesting. Let's see. Trump will win. Casey prophesied it. Okay, not sure who that is, but okay. Heard Amish coming out this year in Pennsylvania. The Amish. That's funny. Why did I say Amish? Don't know. Can't read. Glory to God. I agree. Well, let's see here. Electoral College. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. How can you tell I'm Canadian? So they would basically take all of the electoral college in that state, And again, we have ridings and all kinds of stuff in Canada, so I have to convert everything over. I have to take my shoes and socks off. But your way of doing things, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like that, because it almost becomes a wash. Like in California, it's like, well, if it's all Republican or if it's all Democrats and you lose, like, you have no influence whatsoever over the policies, my understanding, because they all have to give their pledge to the president. So if the president wins, if he happens to be a Republican or happens to be a Democrat, they have to give pledge to that candidate that won. So you're going to use your people that were running and all this kind of stuff. So it's a different way of doing things. I don't know who came up with that. All right, so let's look at these. I don't know. Do you guys like that way of doing it? It just feels like your votes don't count for anything after the election. Like it doesn't mean anything. And perhaps that's why people don't want to vote. Like, there's a lot of people that don't vote, and I can see why now. Because if you're in a Democratic state, it's like my vote won't count unless everybody votes. Interesting. All right, so let's go to these 13 keys here. Let's see here. Let me find it. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can look it up here. For some reason, it's not working on my phone, but I wanted to go over the 13 keys real quick here, because I think this is important to see what Professor Allen is saying. Was it 13 keys to the White House? Yeah. Let's just go through the 13 keys. So the first thing is you basically have to answer yes or no. So there's the party mandate. The incumbent party holds more seats in the House after the midterms than before. False for Biden if the Democrats lost seats. So you have the contest, you have the incumbency, you have the third party, short-term economy, long-term economy. What else do you have here? The policy change, social unrest, scandal, foreign military success, foreign military failure, incumbent charisma, and challenger charisma. So, for example, if Trump, according again to Professor Lichtman, if Trump were to win with 6 or more of these keys, then he would be in. That's according to him. If he fits all this criteria. If he has less, then he won't get in. So let's just see. What's interesting about these keys is Biden was losing. I think you can argue that maybe out of these 13, he had 4 of these keys. There's political unrest, social unrest. He made decisions basically on the first day of stepping into office. No more drilling. Sorry. I remember seeing all these folders that he was just canceling everything that Trump had done before, just left, right, and center. The messing up in Afghanistan, that's on Biden's watch. All this stuff is on Biden's watch. So if you have the economy that feels like people are just not confident, that again is on Biden. So what they did was they formed a bit of a coup, removed Biden and put Kamala in, and she was never voted in, but she's in right now. So if you run this gamut, if you will, if you run the gauntlet on her in regards to these 13 keys, it's going to look like she comes across scot-free because she's so new. She hasn't had a chance to mess up in Afghanistan. She hasn't had a chance to affect the economy or any of that kind of stuff. Why? She's the vice president. Her job is to be on standby in case Joe Biden falls over. Then she can step in. So you can't say it's on her. You could say it's on Biden because he spent 4 years wrecking everything. But then when you insert Kamala and you run the numbers against her, it looks like, oh yeah, she doesn't have any political unrest. She never made any military botches. She never did any policies that harm the economy. Well, that's not fair, or that's not right to run the 13 keys against her, because she never had to do anything. All she did was she went to the border and she never did anything there. So you can't use that same system. Sorry, Professor Alan Lichtman, you can't use that on her. But if you used it on Biden, again, you're going to find out that he only had 4 keys out of the 13. You need 6 or more to get in. So there's kind of a fallacy game going on here where Lichtman is using these keys, these 13 keys, for Kamala, but yet she was never in power just yet. You can argue and say, oh, she whispered stuff in Biden's ear, but that's not good enough. On paper, she did nothing, good or bad. So there's a pass when it comes to the 13 keys, and I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right to use this type of system. So why am I saying this? I'm saying all bets are off when it comes to that. And now he probably got tired of me butchering the election, talking about the election. So he's going to come in here to help me out.
No. You're doing just fine. You're doing just fine. You're doing just fine. So
I'm happy you're here.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm glad you invited me. And I'm going to put you on the spot. Are you going to come on to the broadcast tomorrow night or not?
Yeah, I'm coming on for a bit. I'm going to be having different TV monitors going at the same time and all this kind of stuff. But I am for sure coming on for a bit. I don't think I'll stay the full 90 minutes or whatever. I'll also pop onto yours as well. Yeah. You're talking about yours, right? Or
yeah, we're not going to be on for 90 minutes, brother. We're going to be on for 900 minutes or so. Yeah.
Oh, all day. All right. So I'll probably be coming in and out because you're going live. I think Rick's going live. I think Greg's going live as well. I wanted to do a little bit of live, so it'll be a little bit of bouncing around.
Yeah. So, I mean, uptime obviously is between 6:30 and 8:30 your time, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to start at 4 p.m. your time.
Okay.
So you've got about what 2.5 hours there before uptime starts.
Yeah, I can jump on for you. Yeah, I'll jump on.
That you could come on. So that's 150 minutes right there.
There you go.
And then if you want to, after uptime, you can have overtime.
Yeah, overtime as well. Yeah, I'm expecting, tomorrow's going to be a busy day.
Because we're definitely going to be on, and I kind of joke about 900 minutes, but last time we were on for 500 minutes. So 8 hours and 20 minutes, but it still wasn't enough. We signed off an hour before the 3 a.m. drops.
Oh, wow. So what do you think about this map? You see me play around with this little map here?
Yeah. I think that map is right now is really solid. I think that that Harris is probably going to take Nebraska 2. You have her right now taking Nebraska 2. So I think that she's probably going to take that one electoral vote in the middle of Nebraska, which is basically the area of Omaha. So I think that's probably pretty safe. New Hampshire is probably going to go to Harris. It has a chance to actually go to Trump. We'll see. But Virginia is another one of those that's most likely going to go to Harris, but actually has a chance to go to Trump. New Mexico is a little less likely to go to Trump, but it's possible. I
think that's why it's kind of light blue, that it's leaning towards Harris, but in a miracle or whatever, it could flip. It could flip just
exactly.
like that.
What do you have at the leans right now? 5% or less?
Let me just see here. Where would I see that?
Well, you make the criteria when you color them in.
Yeah. So, for example, like if I were to do, like, I'm guessing he's going to take Pennsylvania. I'm guessing. This is me guessing here.
Sure.
That's 238. He needs. I guess they call this a bit of the Sun Belt: North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona.
Yeah, but those really aren't in play. He's going to take North Carolina by probably 5 or 6, and then Georgia by at least 4. So
if he has those,
he's
at 270. Just that, and he's in.
But take off Pennsylvania.
Okay. He's got a lot of work to do.
Take off Pennsylvania completely.
Okay.
Toss up it.
Boom.
Yep. Now go ahead and fill in. Go ahead and fill in Arizona and Nevada as tilt Republican. Yep. Because those are probably Arizona's probably going to be at least a 5 or 6, and then Nevada's going to be probably around 4. So he's got the entire Sun Belt pretty much locked up. But the problem is here, you'll notice he hasn't reached 270.
Yeah,
he's only reached 268, which is really important about that Nebraska 2 district. You see, so if he was able to go ahead and change that on any 2, you've got it now as no, that's Nebraska itself. Make that red, solid red.
Okay.
Solid red.
Boom.
Yep. And then Nebraska 2 over on the right where it says split votes.
Oh, yes.
Yep. Go ahead and change 2. The 2 under Nebraska, that's Maine that you're hovering over. Nebraska is right below it. Yeah, number 2. Change. No, that's Nebraska at large. You need to change number 2. No, make it solid red. At large is solid red. Yes, and number 2, change that to a tilt.
That would be.
Yep, that right there is a toss up, and then one more click I think is going to give you to a tilt. Yep, there you go. Now if you look down,
pink. Wow, it's getting all crazy here.
Well, you're clicking too many.
Right
there. Stop.
Okay,
go down. Now you'll notice that he's at 269.
Wow.
And go ahead and fill in the Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin for Kamala Harris, all blue.
Okay. Pennsylvania will be blue. Boom.
Yep. That's
Michigan.
solid. Fine for now. That's fine.
Okay. And Michigan.
And Wisconsin. Yep. Okay, look down.
Wow. That's insane.
So if he takes the entire Sun Belt and that district in Omaha, which is a possibility, he can. I mean, that thing went blue twice, last election and in 2008 when Obama ran for his first term. In 2012, though, when Obama ran again, it went back to red, and it also went back to red when Trump ran against Hillary. So if he's able to carry Nebraska 2, then and he wins the entire Sun Belt, which it appears as though he's going to, but Kamala still hangs on to the blue wall. That's what they call Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, the blue wall. If she hangs on to that, then we actually have a 269 to 269 tie. And what that does is it forces a vote in the House of Representatives, 1 vote per state for the president, and in the Senate, 1 vote per senator for vice president. That's how that works. Now, 1 vote per state means you have to take a look and see how many representatives each state has, right? But basically for the last bunch of elections, there's many more red states, as you can see, than there are blue. So Trump would win the presidency. The question is who would win the vice presidency? Right now, the Democrats control the Senate. They have 48 Democrats, 3 are independents that caucus with the Democrats, and then 49 Republicans. So right now the Democrats control the Senate 51-49.
So are you
However-
saying that Trump
on.
could get in and
Hold
then
on.
the VP could be
No,
Harris's
hold on.
VP?
Let me finish. The vote happens after the start of the new term.
Right.
So in other words, if the Republicans take control of the Senate during this election,
Mhm.
then the Republicans would have more people in the Senate and they would vote for JD Vance.
Okay,
And right
gotcha.
now in the Senate, it appears as though there's two flips from Democrat to Republican, which are a lock. And that is West Virginia. If you recall, West Virginia is Joe Manchin country, right? Joe Manchin has been the senator there for a long time. He just defected from the Democrats into an independent, and he's not running for re-election.
Right.
That state of West Virginia Trump will win that state by like 30 to 40 points.
Okay.
So the Republican that is going to run in for the Senate there, he is going to win that state and flip it from blue to red. In Montana, the incumbent Senator Tester, he is going to lose to the Republican this time. So at the very minimum, it's going to be 51 Republicans, 46 Democrats, and 3 that caucus with Democrats. So 51-49. So the Republicans would control the Senate and then vote for JD Vance. So in a 269 to 269 tie, Trump and Vance win.
Gotcha.
If you change that to Nebraska 2 from tilt red to tilt blue,
yeah,
which where most pollsters and most people actually think, number two, not that
Nebraska.
That's right. That's showing 2 electoral votes underneath District 2.
Oh, I see.
Change that back to solid
right
red.
here.
Change that back to solid red. And then underneath the 2 where it says 1 electoral vote, change that to tilt blue. Or yes, that's fine. Right there, it's fine.
Okay.
Now I'll go down and take a look. Kamala Harris
268.
wins. Kamala
Wow.
Harris wins 270 to 268 if she takes that one and takes the blue wall, and Trump takes the entire Sun Belt. What's really interesting about that district is that just this last year, earlier this year, the Nebraska was going to put to a vote in their Congress to not do the split vote anymore and make it a winner take all. See, you notice that only Nebraska and Maine have these districts, have a split vote. They were going to make it a winner take all situation, which means that Trump would get all 5 electoral votes.
Right.
However, the Senate, one of the senators that defected from the Democrats to the Republicans earlier this year gave them 33 senators in Nebraska, which would overcome any filibuster that would occur. So in other words, if they put it to a vote to do winner take all, that would have happened. That they would have actually passed it without a filibuster, and it would have given Trump all 5 electoral votes instead of 4, which would given him a tie if that blue wall goes to Kamala and the Sun Belt goes to Trump. However, the guy who defected from the Democrats to the Republicans, he said that he would not vote for it.
Oh, wow.
So he said that he would allow the filibuster to occur, which means that the thing would die. And the reason why is because it appears as though he wants to run as mayor of Omaha next year.
Oh, okay.
So this whole election, if this whole thing happens and Kamala takes the blue wall and Trump takes the Sun Belt and Kamala takes Omaha, which is 1 electoral vote, and she wins the election 270 to 268, it'll be because of one person.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. That's crazy.
Yes.
You Americans do things different. You guys do things very
if he
different.
just would have said, fine, we'll go with a winner take all, it would have been that way for this election. It would have been 5 electoral votes to Trump because Trump wins Nebraska by like 20 points. So he would have done it. However, this guy said he didn't want to do that because he wants to run for mayor of Omaha. And he thinks that if he did this, the people in Omaha would not appreciate not having that one electoral vote for them anymore.
Right.
It's just very interesting. That's all.
Yeah. So this Alan Lichtman professor guy that I was talking about, the 13 keys to the White House, do you buy any of that stuff?
Well, no, because he changed his definitions. See, he used to say that the economy was based on public perception. He used to say, do Americans think that the economy is not going well? And so he would rate that on that. However, this time he didn't do that. He said he based it off of the GDP data. And so that flipped it from a true to a false. You see, so he changed, and also the scandals. He says that there's been no scandals.
Yeah, like
the entire thing about Joe Biden. Well, I mean, look, I mean, talking about Afghanistan or any of that stuff. Just focus on Joe Biden himself and the candidate and taking him out and not having a democratically elected primary. That is a scandal in itself.
Yeah.
But you see, he manipulated the answers in order to do this. And then he went online just this last week and showed his map.
Yep.
And he's only lived in all blue states, and he has severe TDS.
Yep, 100%. His temperature is like 270 right now.
so just like 270 to win, right? Yeah. So that's a good number. But the point is that he, just like a lot of Democrats, he's lost his ability to have logic and reason. Yeah. And he's basing everything off of emotion now. And his predominant emotion right now in his head is that Trump cannot win.
Yeah. It's over for America and all this blah, 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 blah stuff.
He feels like he would lose his life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the card that they use right at the end of desperation. Their fingers are just at the edge of the cliff and they're like, nobody likes me. Nobody wants me around.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that's why you see all these Hollywood celebrities and stuff endorsing Kamala Harris, because if they didn't, they would never be able to work there again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're definitely afraid for their livelihood. Some actually even are afraid about their lives. They think they're actually going to be killed, which is ridiculous. But then they have to go to that zone really to just justify all the things that they're doing. Now, notice they keep on saying that they're gonna do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
They don't provide limits on those things. They just say whatever it takes. And you have to remember that the way these people are wired right now, they have been deceived. They like to deceive as well. They're deceiving themselves and others, and they have been given over to a debased mind. So they have lost the ability to have a sound mind at this point. So they will do whatever it takes, and they will be able to justify it in their mind that, yes, we may have done this and this and this, but the end result was Trump didn't become president, and that's more important than
and that's how it seems like they're looking at. Like, I just heard Alan from his own mouth say that Trump is a dictator because he said on day one he's going to drill. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, why would you mix the two together? And he's like, well, a dictator on day one never gives back their power. Again, that makes no sense. It makes sense if you're a dictator, but that makes no sense
if you're the president of the United States.
Like, it's like,
I mean, I wonder if
reaching.
The same people, though, didn't say jack squat about Joe Biden rescinding 94 executive orders on day one.
Oh, I remember all the folders. They're just jacked up to here.
Nobody said Biden's being a dictator, right? Republicans didn't even say that. They said it's a bad decision. Why would you do that? They didn't call him a dictator.
No.
Why wouldn't the Democrats call him a dictator if they're going to use the same measurement? Because it's their guy, you see. And number two as well is that, remember when Obama was in the office and he said, well, how are you going to get this passed? He goes, passed? What do you mean? I've got a phone and a pen.
Oh, man.
Nobody called him a dictator when he said he had a pen and a phone.
Yeah.
But nobody called him a dictator when he made DACA a legal thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody called Joe Biden a dictator when he tried twice to have student loans wiped out.
Yeah. Yeah, just more corrupt. He's making mistakes. He's senile, like all these other things, right? That they've said that to Trump. They're going to use that. Believe me, as soon as he turns 80, they're going to start using the senile thing.
No, they already have. They called him unstable. They've already tried that on the American people, and it didn't work.
It's getting
because
old.
all you had to do was take a look at him, and because they always say, "Oh, he just rambles. He never says anything." Blah 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 blah. But they're not actually listening to him.
No,
so
just go on Joe Rogan for 4 hours and listen to him.
Right,
wasn't rambling.
No, and he's just he's exhausted and this and that, and yet you see him rally after rally doing these events that they call stunts and all these things. Like, he's so exhausted, he's doing stunts, that's staged and all these things. But then you see a picture of Kamala Harris and she's sitting in the airplane like this.
Yeah.
So
I know it's bad.
The classic projection. Somebody said that the Democrats are the biggest projectors in the history of the world, aside maybe from the Pharisees, but they're really close. And projection and hypocrisy go hand in hand. And you see them basically everything that they accuse you of doing, they are doing twice as much.
Oh, yeah.
And if you call them on it, they will double down. If you call on them again, they will triple down. They never give up. Just like Satan, he never gives up until you are sealed. And even then, he still throws darts, but it's not going to make a difference because you're sealed. But he'll try until you actually believe. He will try every single way to dissuade you from not believing. And just like the Democrats, they will try every single way, calling people Hitler, fascist, garbage, whatever they may do. They're just celebrity endorsements, whatever, running a different ad about Gaza in one state and Israel in the other. They'll do whatever they have to do in order to deceive someone to get their vote.
Yeah, it's old. It's tired. Like, I grow tired of it. Like, really, this is your game? You actually stole some of the scripts from Trump where he's like, yeah, this person's old, he's incompetent. So they grab the script out of his hand and then they read it to Trump. They say, you're old, you're incompetent. I know you are. I know I am. But what are you? What's that little thing that you did in the park when you're pushing the other kid down?
I know you are, but
I know you are. Yeah, exactly. We're going back to that now.
They've resorted to calling names and so forth. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And they take them out of context to try to make their point, because they can't take them in full context, because if they did that, that's actually a decent message. Sometimes he communicates it in a way that is probably not the best, but they take little lines, and even people like Bill Maher are like, don't lie, stop lying to me and saying that he's going to put Liz Cheney in front of a firing squad. I mean, stop lying to me. He says bad enough things in Bill Maher's mind. All you need to do is just give him the full context, and then let people make up their own minds. Yeah. But you see, the Democrats don't like to do that. They don't like to let people make up their own minds for themselves. Actually, they said it on CNN about COVID. Don't do your own research. Don't.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. And yes, people are absolutely getting exhausted from it. And these attacks aren't working as much anymore. And as somebody said in your chat, Trump may be the worst thing we could ever imagine, but right now he's way better than the Dems. And that's the interesting thing, is that over the last 4 years, people have seen what can happen under Democrat control. And they may not like Trump. And there are a whole bunch of Democrats that are going to be holding their noses and voting for Trump because they want some type of economic prosperity. They want to have a country that actually has a border. They want to protect their daughters from having men in their locker rooms and playing against them and getting cremated by them. I mean, these people are seeing the Democrats for what they are, and that they've gone off the deep end. Almost every time a Democrat defects from the Republican Party, they always say, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. They left me. And
Exactly.
Ronald Reagan was the one who really kind of started that back in the 60s
Okay.
when they
That's
said,
interesting.
why are you running as a Republican? You left the Democrats. He's like, no, they left me.
Interesting. Yeah, I think JFK Jr. said that as well.
Yeah, well, I know
but
that
yeah, it seems common
Jeff Van
sense.
Drew said that. Tulsi Gabbard said that. RFK
Yeah.
Jr. said that. So
Yeah.
yes, they're all saying that
Common.
this party is gone. This party is unrecognizable.
Yeah, that's scary, and that part. But if you're name calling people, mudslinging, all that stuff, it's like big deal. Like, grow up, just go vote and all this kind of stuff. But people are like, they get mad if somebody says something that's true and it hurts their feelings, and you got to fill out a hurt feelings report and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, seriously? Can't we just have a debate? Can't we talk about issues without getting mad? And can't we use metaphors and stuff like, oh man, I want to blow this bill down. It's like, oh, he said he wants to use a gun. Oh my goodness.
Remember when he was talking about the auto industry, it's going to be a bloodbath if we don't put tariffs on cars, and they said Trump said there's going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, exactly. Out of context.
In the streets. I mean, so yes, you can't this is what I noticed. You can't actually have a logical argument with them anymore.
No.
They are controlled by emotions, and they also have a whole bunch of lies that are now facts in their mind. And so you're not going to be able to change them. But I think that shouldn't surprise us when you consider how many people during the tribulation blaspheme God when they know that he's the one punishing them, and they will not repent.
They still, after getting pancaked by 75 to 100-pound hailstones, and they're crawling along the ground, and they're got their fist up in the air at God,
and they
that
still
tells
will
you
not
it gets pretty
repent.
bad. They won't repent.
An angel will come to them and say, do not take the mark, and they will take it.
Yeah.
So
that's a different world.
We're seeing that mentality right now. That's how close we are to the tribulation. This was not the case where the majority of the people on the planet were like that. Okay.
No,
it wasn't like that in the past. It just wasn't. But now you can see the degradation of humanity, especially in the last 4 generations, that it's really ramping right toward a tribulation period where you can see these people doing that. And that's why Bob and I always talk when we're on Uptime about the lines being blurred right now, that you can see some of the stuff that's in the tribulation already kind of taking place today during the beginning of sorrows, because the line has become blurred between the two.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing that transition into it, which means that we're very, very, very close to that happening.
Yeah.
This can't be sustained for any length of time.
No. And that's the difference. Like, I think it's in Isaiah, where back when Isaiah was coming against Israel and that, like, you guys don't even blush anymore. Like when they're doing stuff out in the open, God's like you're not even trying to hide this stuff. That's what I feel is going on. People don't blush anymore. Some people just watch porn endlessly, and then they can't look at a woman the same way anymore to get married or anything. They're just like, I dulled all my senses, and I don't respect women anymore, or whatever it is. I'm not picking on people that have addiction. I'm just saying that if you do that for a long enough period of time, you're not going to blush anymore. Nothing's going to shock your system. That's what we're talking about here. These people in America, in Canada, it's the same thing here. After a while of lying so much, you can't tell the truth anymore when it hits you in the face. You can't tell it.
Now, here's the interesting part too, is that they're leaning on their own understanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know where they're getting their understanding from are from people who have no understanding. So they're
blind
taking,
leading the blind.
Yeah, it's a blind leading a blind. Exactly. I mean, you look at, for example, Kamala Harris had Cardi B come on to the stage and to do a speech at a rally, but the teleprompter broke. And so she was not able to start the speech. She just stood there, and then she started. She said, "Give me a minute. Give me a minute. Give me a minute." And then she was waiting. She's like, "Okay, give me a minute. Give me a minute." And then it just wasn't happening. She's like, "Patience. I need patience. Where's patience?" And she wasn't talking about people giving her patience or having patience to wait for her. She was talking about her aide named Patience to come up and give her cell phone so that she could read off of it. And she did. She gave her the cell phone and she started reading off it. And she was botching every single sentence. She was botching it up. But that just goes to show how mindless these people actually are. And notice, by the way, I've noticed this, like started noticing, I think about 30 years ago, that all Democrats all read from a paper. They always read from a paper. They always get it, senators, House representatives, they always get a piece of paper and they read off of it. And they don't have any independent thought. Republicans, though, in Senate and House, they'll just start speaking. But Democrats, every time you'll see somebody come over their shoulder and then give them a piece of paper. And they'll read
you can tell it doesn't feel authentic. Like let's just use our various channels. Like none of us go scripted. Like you might jot down a note here and there, but for me, I just hit record. Whatever comes out, I just blah, and hope that I say something intellectual. But I don't have a teleprompter or any of that stuff. Our prime minister was caught coming outside of his house, and he stood in front of a teleprompter for, I'm going to say, it was probably about the longest 40 seconds you've ever heard or ever witnessed in your life.
Right.
And they asked him about Trump getting in, I think, as a president or something. And he's like, "So what do you think about that?" And he's like, for 40 seconds, it was brutal. And you could tell the teleprompter was frozen. And he just had nothing for us. Zero, zilcho, nada. Nothing. That's horrible.
You know what's interesting is that the people that vote for him, and for Kamala Harris too, it happened to Kamala Harris, the teleprompter went down. She said 32 days, 32 days, 5 times.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember that one. Yeah.
32 days. 32 days. 32 days. Yeah. So, but the people who vote for them, all she or he had to do was say some vulgarity about any vulgarity sets them off. They all clap and cheer about vulgarity. Robert De Niro does. He goes out there and just is vulgar, says vulgar words, and they all cheer whenever he says a bad word. In terms of Trudeau, all he had to say is Trump is a fascist, Trump is a racist. And the people who vote for him would be like, yes, he's great. I love him. You see? So they don't actually talk about any of the issues because they know that if they talked about the issues, that they would turn a lot of people off. Even some that are within their base, they would turn off because they'd be like, don't talk about those things. Don't talk about, that's why Kamala Harris was asked, do you think you made any mistakes? Do you think you have any weaknesses? No, you know what? She did the Office. Remember the Office with Steve Carell? She said, "Well, my strengths are my weaknesses. Sometimes my strengths are my weaknesses," which is exactly what Steve Carell said in that sitcom. So
I think you say
Holy Spirit doesn't need a teleprompter. See this? The Holy Spirit doesn't need a teleprompter, Shane. That's why you and I are able to go on to Uptime without any pre-scripted something. And we actually don't even think about what we're going to say. The words just
good or bad.
Well, if you rely on this Holy Spirit, you don't really normally say anything bad. Let's put it that way. I mean, if you rely 100% on the Holy Spirit, you don't say anything bad. But we still are in this sinful body. So sometimes something will poke out. But if you rely completely on the Holy Spirit, you are going to be able to say things and you won't even have to think about them beforehand. That's what happens to me on Uptime. I get on a roll, I just start talking, and I'm not even thinking about what I'm talking about. The words just come out. And usually it's a whole bunch of Bible verses right after one after another to prove a point.
No, that's good. And I think if you start like there's a point where like Jordan Peterson, you can tell when he's trying to explain something that he's going around a little bit and he's coming back, but he's looking at it from every single angle before he attacks, kind of thing, right? Like he's looking at it, and sometimes it could take him 30 minutes to get to his point, and he'll bring up other stuff, but he'll hit it. And I think there are other people that will be like, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked that question because we're all here to answer questions
To ask that question,
that
right?
are being asked.
And it's
Thank
very
you.
important that we answer those questions that people have because people are important and so are those questions.
So are those questions. Yeah. That's
Next
when
question.
you know the next question. Because that was a really good question that you just asked me. If you can ask me another question like that one, we're all here because we're all here.
That's
today.
every single answer that Kamala's ever given.
Oh, it's
They asked her, did you support Prop? I think it's Prop 36 in California that basically gives stiffer penalties for drug crimes and for violent crimes. And she said, the election is tomorrow. And, I'm out here making sure that we're going to get every single vote counted, and we're here for the election, and the election's very important. And in regards to that, the election is very important. I don't want to, make a case for things some way or the other because the election is just so important. And it's like,
no, yeah. Wow.
Wait a minute.
What?
You're the president of the United States, and we don't know where you stand on an issue, and you're refusing us to tell you. Is that the leader that you want? Is that the transparency that you want? So when she does that, her base gets happy, but everybody else goes, you didn't answer the question.
Yeah. I can't imagine her sitting down in front of Putin and he has all his translators and he's listening to the headset as he's ready for her response. He can ask something simple. I fear for the U.S.
You do put Putin and I'll do Kamala. Ask me a question.
Okay. Do you know anything about the history of Ukraine? Because I'm going to give you a history lesson.
Oh, you're going to give me a history lesson. Okay, yeah. Well, what I know about Ukraine is that it's a small country compared to your country, which is a big country. And big countries usually are bigger than small countries. And small countries have a tougher time to defend themselves against bigger countries. And so since you're a bigger country and they're a smaller country, it probably seems to reason that smaller countries have tougher times against bigger countries and they would have a tougher time against you. The history, well, I know that it's in Europe. That's what I know about Ukraine. It's in Europe and it's part of Europe. And Europe's a very important continent because there are a lot of Europeans that live there. And it's very important that Europe is safe and Europe is a good place to live because Europe is supposed to be, it really is one of our allies. So it's a very good place to be an ally at in order to have this good relationship with Ukraine.
Order 66. Execute Order 66. That's code.
Yeah,
you watch
exactly.
Star Wars.
Oh, good. 66. That sounds good. I like that. Okay. Thank you for the meeting, Mr. Putin.
Yeah, thank you for that.
You're right. You're right, Aban. That was way better than she would do. You see, I can't even get to there. I can't even get to there because I actually, while I was talking, I'm like, that's
this
too much.
Is terrible. I know.
That's
It's
too,
like
that's
you're
too intelligent. That's too intelligent.
You're making it look
dumb
too smart.
myself down. I'm sorry. But you know what? Listen, she would not be able to deal with any of it. So she'd have to give it to her administration and people. And every single one of those people are a bunch of idiots. So all you're going to get out of it is just really bad stuff. And so she's never going to, just like Biden, if he ever tries to make an independent decision or says something on his own, it's a disaster. It's been that way since 1972. Okay. That guy has not changed. As Trump said, he's never been the brightest bulb. Okay. The guy hasn't. Kamala is probably, and what Trump said is right. Kamala is actually worse. Yeah. She's worse than him because not only is she dumb, she doesn't have the experience to be that dumb. So she's but in both cases, they don't make the decisions. Yeah. Those decisions are provided to them on a piece of paper.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that even Donald Trump complimented Joe Biden and said they formed a coup on him. And at least he has the experience behind him and all this kind of people voted for him, all this stuff. But Kamala, like who likes her? Like really? Like
I
out
mean,
of
she
her
almost
people, like who likes her?
when she ran for attorney general of California, she only won by 1 point against a Republican in an R23 electorate. I'm sorry, a D23 electorate. In other words, 22% of Democrats voted against her.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
When she
That's
ran
crazy.
for president, she did not receive 1 delegate. She was at polling at between 0 and 1% when she dropped out before the first primary was held.
Oh wow. So she didn't even make it to
In other
the batter's
words,
box.
she's never received a delegate in her life that somebody voted for her
Wow.
to become president.
Wow. That's not a good look at all.
That's
for
one of the
America.
reasons why you don't hear about the threat to democracy so much anymore.
Yeah.
You still hear it a little bit, but they dropped it from their main piece because after what happened in that she was installed without any kind of primary or election or democratic process, they had to kind of drop that because it showed that they are a threat to democracy because they don't even have their selection done by a democratic means.
Yeah, and if it is done, they don't honor it.
Right.
You know, they just when Sleepy Joe was sleeping, they just decided, you know what, you're out. When on an interview before, like I don't know, it was just a few days before, he's like, I am not leaving. Like, no, I'm staying. I don't care what anybody thinks. They're
correct.
wrong.
He said the Lord himself.
Yeah.
The Lord himself would have to come down and tell me to get out of the race.
Yeah.
And then
Next
2 days
day,
later, they provide a piece of paper that has forensically a different signature pattern than Joe Biden's signature.
Oh, for sure. Like you can just tell on a
Proven
piece of paper.
forensically that Joe Biden did not sign that paper.
Yeah. I'm sure he was fighting it too, saying, I'm not doing it. And they're grabbing his hand saying, sign it.
I don't think, but forensic scientists looked at it and said, even under duress, he did not sign that piece of paper.
Yeah, for sure. Which is sad, I think, as well. Like for the guy. Sad.
Yeah. But you know what? Democrats will call you conspiracy theorists. Just like forensically, Obama's birth certificate was shown to have 13 photoshopped images in it.
Right.
But that's a conspiracy theory, even though a forensic scientist proved it. But you know what? That doesn't really matter to them because even if it were true, and first of all, they don't want anybody to believe that, so they'll just discredit you right off the bat. And then number two, even if it were true, they just dismiss it. We just saw that with the garbage thing.
Yeah.
They came out and said, oh, he did not say that it's supporters. He said supporters with an apostrophe. And they changed the record in order to make that happen. And the stenographer there said, you have a different record that's out in the press than what's in the official record, which is actually in violation of the law. And then all the Democrats just said, oh, well, that doesn't matter. Trump supporters are garbage. He was right.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's crazy, man. Yeah. And now because we have media, we have YouTube and all this stuff, whenever somebody's being interviewed, you can tell when it's being edited now. If we're not stupid, we can tell.
Right. Because they'll start with the denial. They always deny first, right? They'll start with denial, say, no, that's not what happened. That's not true. And even if it does happen, they will go ahead and they will just say, oh, well, that's okay because blah, 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 and they'll justify it. That's what they always do. But I'll tell you one thing, the only reason why we can see this is because we have the Holy Spirit and the discernment inside of us. If you do not, you'll have a really tough time. And that's why the majority of people on the left are unsaved.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't have any discernment. The ones who are saved and are not born again, those people can be swayed by a whole bunch of different things. Think about Joe Biden himself. He says that he's a practicing Catholic.
Right.
That's what he professes to be.
Right. Gotcha.
A practicing Catholic. However, if you look at his fruits, you would say that, especially for the Catholic Church, since they believe so much in that salvation is not a one-time thing of repentance, but it's actually a journey along the way, that you have to prove yourself to be worthy of having salvation over a course of your life, that if you looked at those fruits, Joe Biden would fall short greatly.
Right.
Even if you took the works out of it and just looked at what he does to like work towards salvation, because we know that you can't work yourself towards salvation.
Right.
It's a free gift. It's grace through faith in Christ, and that's it. If you believe in Jesus Christ, that he died on the cross and rose again on the third day, you will be saved. Period. There's no extra stuff to that. But if you took out the working towards salvation and just looked at his fruits, you would say that he doesn't believe. He doesn't believe in that. He doesn't believe in things that Jesus said. He doesn't believe that when Jesus said God created them male and female, he created them.
Come on, man.
He disagrees with that.
Right. 100%. So what do you think, like, for tomorrow? Do you think this is going to be over tomorrow night? Or do you think, or are we going to stretch it out for a couple of days?
There's two ways it can go. And the first way is the way of 2016. That, correct, he's not even Catholic by Catholic standards. I mean, so he's a false professor of his faith. How can you trust somebody who's a false professor? You'd be like, I'm dusting my feet off. I'm not going to associate with that guy. I'm not going to partake with that. You're absolutely right. Okay, it can go one of two ways. 2016 method, which is Trump is so far ahead, and they don't have the capabilities to do the shenanigans in order to overcome it.
Right.
So Kamala Harris concedes, not resigns. I wish. I mean, why don't you resign right now and just let's move on. No. Then we can. I mean, if Biden and Kamala Harris resigned, then Mike Johnson would be president. He's Speaker of the House. That's how that worked. That's how it worked back in 1974 with Gerald Ford.
Right.
Both Nixon and Agnew resigned, and then Gerald Ford was Speaker of the House and became president. And he ran in 76 and lost to like one of the worst presidents of all time, Jimmy Carter. But which was crazy because Ford went against Reagan in the primary, and Reagan almost won. He only lost by one state.
Oh wow!
But then Reagan came back in 1980, which is all God, of course, because Reagan should have won that primary. It was like, how could he have not won that primary? But you see, if he wins that primary, he's president between 1976 and 1984. When did he do Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall? It was in 1984.
87. That's right. After. That's right, too.
He was at the very last. It was in September. He was at the very end of his presidency when he did that. And so if he would have been able to be president between 76 and 84, he wouldn't be there doing that speech.
Right.
God has a plan for everything. So it can go either one of two ways. One way, Kamala concedes and it's over basically by midnight.
And when you say concede, like you're also mean like she'll transition it respectfully as well, or do you think it'll just be an announcement that
No, you asked me about how the election will go tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm just off the top of my head, like, because there's always a transition too, right? Do you think it'll go right?
That's a separate question.
We'll put that aside. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We're just going to talk about tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow, if one way goes, she concedes. She says, you know what? We ran a good campaign, but apparently the population of the United States, at least the voting population, are a bunch of racists. So that's what we have to live with. And so there you go. We're going to go ahead and concede, just like Hillary did, and the election will be called, and that will end that. Now, there's still more, and we'll have a different question about that. Or number two, she will be advised not to concede ever. That you, under no circumstances, can concede. And they will call up ABC, CBS, NBC, the Washington Post, the New York Times, USA Today, the AP, Reuters, and they will say, under no circumstances can you print that Donald Trump has won the election. We will tell you when you can print something in the future.
Wow.
That is the second way it could go down. Now, let's talk about what would happen afterwards for both cases. Number one, if Kamala concedes, then you will see rioting from the left.
Oh, wow.
You will see rioting break out all over the country, and they will do whatever they think is necessary in order to reverse it, in order to say, no, 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 we don't accept it. We're going to burn your country down unless you change your minds, including you, Kamala Harris. We are going to terrorize, and you're going to see 2016 style Antifa. You're going to see the summer of love in 2020, but it's going to be that to the nth degree. Okay.
Wow.
If she concedes, and the only way that's going to be quelled is if the Democrats step in each of their states and unleash the National Guard and stop it. They may do that after days to weeks or even months. They may let it go all the way out into January through Christmas. That's what they did in Seattle. They let those people have their autonomous zone for 1 month.
Yeah, I remember that.
And just until people started dying, that's when they actually started going in there and saying, you guys can't do this anymore. So that's one way. Now, even with the concession, that doesn't mean, and the riots, it doesn't mean doesn't mean that Trump's going to be able to actually transition into power, because you still have the hurdle of January 6th. And that's why it is so important in regards to who controls the House. You see, on January 6th, the election is certified.
Right.
Okay. Not before that and not after it. It's on January 6th is when that's the constitutional date. In order for that to happen, it has to be certified on that date. And then the inauguration happens on the 20th, unless it's a Sunday, then it happens on the 21st. But the House right now is controlled by the Republicans, 220 to 212, and there's 3 vacancies. However, the House makeup is going to be after the election. Just like the Senate, the new term will have already started. And they will have already elected their new Speaker of the House by January 6th. Well, hope maybe. It depends on how contentious that is. But what it all boils down to are 3 seats in California and 3 seats in New York. Those seats went to Republicans in this last election. So what those states did is they redrew their congressional lines and they redistrict those lines for those districts. And that's called gerrymandering. They basically redrew the line so that more Democrats would be in that district, so that the Democrat would win in this election. If those 3 states flip, then it would be 214 Republicans to 221 Democrats. And the Democrats would control the House. Jamie Raskin, who's right now a ranking member, but would become an actual chairman, he was the guy who headed up the second impeachment on Trump. That's when the Democrats controlled the House.
Okay.
He has stated that if they control the House and Trump said that he's basically, everyone said that he's the winner, they are going to say to the Trump mobs, this is his quote, "We are going to say to the Trump mobs, we're sorry, your candidate is disqualified under the 14th Amendment for being an insurrectionist." He said, Then we will pull out the bodyguards and we will go immediately into civil war conditions.
Wow.
Okay. So
That's
that's what could happen if Kamala concedes.
Okay, now if Trump gets in.
Now, if what?
Trump gets in.
No. There's no. That's not an option. Either Kamala concedes on election night, or Kamala never concedes.
Okay,
so let's go to
I
the
see what you're
Kamala
saying.
never. Let's go to the Kamala never concede.
She doesn't accept it, right? She doesn't
Okay.
accept it at all.
Let's go to that option. Then what that will do is trigger warfare like we've never seen before. If you guys were ever went through or lived through and saw what happened in the year 2000 with Bush v. Gore, that was
Right.
months, a couple of months of wrangling and going to the Supreme Court multiple times, going to the Florida Supreme Court. Well, this won't just be one state. This will be multiple states. That was just one state with hanging chads.
Yeah, that was in Florida, right?
That was in Florida. And this will be multiple states with
Yeah, I can't
multiple
even
complaints about election regularities and fraud on both sides going back and forth.
My
Circuit
goodness.
courts will have to get involved. Appellate courts will have to get involved. And the Supreme Court will have to get involved a lot. And that's what will happen over the course of those months while the left is rioting. Okay, so the left rioting happens either way. The right is not going to riot regardless.
Right.
The right is not going to go to the Capitol. The right's not going to go and patriotically go to the Capitol. The right's not going to do that this time. Because it was a setup. They should have saw that from before. They didn't, but whatever. That was just emotional responses.
Yeah.
And they got baited into something by a whole bunch of people who were not Republicans and were bad actors. The 20 people that basically broke down the barriers and so forth.
Yeah.
We already know that they were not. Like Ray Epps is not a Republican. Okay. He's a Fed. So, and yet, the 20 people that broke down the barriers and so forth, none of them were arrested. Coincidence? Don't think so. Anyway, so the left's going to riot on both, either way, but you're going to have lawfare, and the lawfare could result in the Supreme Court saying your case against Trump does not hold up, which ultimately brings you to January 6th, where you loop into the other scenario where Jamie Raskin may or may not do what he says he's going to do.
Right. So here's another.
The only way that Trump gets into power is if Jamie Raskin decides not to do what he said he was going to do because Kamala Harris and them say, don't do that option. I think there's a slim chance of that actually happening. I think that they could say that cooler heads could prevail and say, Raskin, you just can't do this. You can't do it now. We'll be fine. And then people will say, you're the one who said that he's a threat and he's a dictator and he's Hitler. We can't be fine. And they'll go back and forth on that. And we'll see what that happens. That is a chance. If they don't do that and he's certified on the 6th, then what they'll do is they'll make it extremely difficult for him to come into office and transition to power. Okay. They will tape doors shut. They will lock doors. They will break things in the White House. They will do all those things like they did when it went from Obama to Trump. So when Trump came into the White House, everything was busted. Everything was broken. File cabinets were busted. Records were gone. Basically, they didn't transition. They didn't help transition. They didn't do anything. They just basically said on January 20th, they all left the office, and then it was like, good luck. And then you saw coffee mugs broken, all kinds of things. That's one way he gets in. The second way he gets in is if she doesn't concede, the Supreme Court ultimately rules that here are the accepted votes and this and that, and all adds up to a Trump victory. And then Jamie Raskin again does not do what he said he's going to do. And then you still have the bad transition. But all in the meantime, though, you have the rioting. And if he does get into office, then you have even more rioting. You have Capitol rioting. And then Trump is going to bring in the National Guard if he can, or the military, because most likely he's going to get shut down by a Democratic-controlled House and won't be able to bring in any National Guard because whoever their speaker is, if it's Jamal or not, don't know. But if it is, they'll do it like Pelosi said, no, the optics aren't good. And so Trump will bring in the military, and then the left will really lose it then.
So if, let's just say we're wrong, and if Kamala gets in a landslide, then what?
That's not an option. If you take a look at
landscape.
all the reason why is if you take a look at all the polls, actually, I might be able to present something. You can
Sure.
hold on one second. Yeah, let me try to present something and see what you think about this because because this is a preview for tomorrow night.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can bring that up.
Yep. So,
Okay, cool.
do you want it full screen or like this?
Yeah, just full screen it for a bit. So you'll see here back in 2016, these were all the polls, the last polls for the election. This is their error. Every single one of these polls erred towards the Democrats. Okay.
Okay.
Some even is up to 7.9%. CNBC had Clinton winning the popular vote by 10. She won it by 2.1.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. Here's 2020.
I remember going to bed and she was winning. The next day it was like, nope.
Here's 2020. Every single one of the polls had Biden winning the popular vote, which he did by 4.5. But some of them, NBC, CNBC, CBS, ABC, had him, Quinnipiac, and CNN had him winning by double digits. You can see their margins of error here: 7.5. A lot of them were 5.5. Here's a 7.5. Here's a 5.5. Here's a 6.5. They were off by that much. Let's take a look at the polls today.
I see where you're going.
Trump up by 1, Trump up by 2, Trump up by 3, Trump up by 2, Trump up by 2, Trump up by 2. As you can see, it's hugely, hugely different than last time. And no, it's not because all of a sudden they came to their senses and they decided to poll correctly. They actually, that actually is how big of a lead that he actually has. And so when they say that it's tight, they're going off their poll that shows that it's even with a 4% error built into it. So even if the errors aren't as great as last time and they're only half, he wins the popular vote between 2 and 4 points. And if he wins the popular vote between 2 and 4 points, then he sweeps all the swing states. So it's actually an impossibility for Kamala Harris to sweep all the swing states without shenanigans.
Right. I got you. That makes sense.
So the only option that Harris to sweep all the swing states is if shenanigans, not by just the votes themselves.
Right. And is there something between today and tomorrow, and obviously I'm a Trump fan, that he could do that would mess things up? Like, could he screw up royally? It's pretty much everybody's voting, everything, and it's all.
Yep. Okay. It's locked in at this point.
Good. Yeah. So now we're just basically waiting for the polls to come in tomorrow and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So without shenanigans, he wins the popular vote by 2, and he wins the Electoral College 312 to 226. He could win the Electoral College by more if he takes New Hampshire, for example. New Hampshire would be the first one to fall, and then he would get 4 from them. The next one after that would be Virginia. Virginia would be a pretty big win for him. I believe that one has 13, and then Minnesota would be the next to fall. That one has 10. And then New Mexico, it would be the next after that at 5. And then Maine.
So we would start knowing this stuff basically because all the polls close earlier in the East. So we could start seeing this stuff.
Yeah, that's going to be the key. So when the polls close in the East and we start seeing the first results come in and we get to about 20% or so of the precincts reported, we will be able to see how well the predictions are. We'll start being able to see if there's actually a depressed Democrat turnout and the Republicans have come out big. We'll start seeing that pretty early, especially in a state like Georgia.
Because I remember 4 years ago, I think it was, during Hillary Clinton's run, they would announce that she won. And I'm like, are you kidding me already? And then all of a sudden, boom, here, we just have it now in. Clinton has won because some of these states flipped.
But
or
nobody
whatever.
ever did that, though.
Yeah, and then the next morning, it was like Trump won.
That's not true.
Huh?
No, that's not true. In 2016, Hillary Clinton conceded that night.
I'm pretty sure I remember seeing reports of, according to our calculations, she's won. Or am I thinking all the way back to Gore?
I don't know,
because I remember
maybe you were thinking
of Gore and Bush.
Maybe, but they called it for Bush to begin with.
Man, I could have swore I remember that night that they're saying, "Yep, looks like Hillary's got this one in the bank."
No, that was before. That was before the election. That's what they were saying before the election.
Because I remember going to bed twice, waking up the next morning. I'm like, "What's going on?" Hillary was in the lead, and I'm like, "Oh, that kind of sucks."
No, she conceded that. No, she did not concede the next day.
Oh, I know what it was. Yeah, you're right. Night. It flipped.
She made her people wait for her, and then John Podesta went out and told the crowd that we're going to fight. We're gonna keep on going. We're gonna make sure every vote is counted. You need to go home. And they sent everybody home, and they did not have a celebration. And then Hillary called Trump conceded.
Okay.
And then Trump came out that night and accepted it.
Okay. I remember that. That could be a parallel universe maybe I was living in. I don't know. But you're right. I do remember the call, and obviously they made fun of it later that she was crying and all that stuff. But I do remember, and maybe it was just the late where all of a sudden because they're always calculating all night long. They're saying if this stays like this looks like she could have won. Maybe it was just kind of hinting that she could. And then when it flipped, it got pretty quiet. I do remember that on CNN. We were watching where all of a sudden they're like, it was almost like a death in the family is what it felt like.
Right. The next day, she made a speech in a purple dress. Okay. So yeah, it was like, it could have been like 1 o'clock in the morning or 12:30 or so when she actually conceded. So technically it was the next day, but it was basically election night.
Right.
When she conceded. And then the next day she came out with Bill in her purple dress. And that's when she told everybody that we have to accept the results, blah, 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 blah. Right. So, but that night is when she called up Trump and conceded, and Trump came out that night and accepted it. So, yeah, it was interesting, but that actually was more normal than that was pretty normal, actually. It was pretty
That's
normal.
What you kind of expect, that kind of thing.
Yeah. 2016 was actually really normal. 2000 was way abnormal. They called it for Bush, and then they called it for Gore, and then they said, we don't know. And that's when it went to the whole thing about the voters' intent, dimpled Chads, hanging Chads, all kinds of stuff to the Supreme Court, back and forth. It was crazy. I remember watching that and just going, who's going to be the president? Nobody knows. It's December 10th and nobody still knows. Yeah. But
didn't it seem like when Trump was winning in 2020 that he had a nice lead? Because I remember going to bed. I'm pretty sure it was then where it's like, oh, it feels like he has it. And then the next morning, it's like,
you can watch that on my channel, the 8.5-hour broadcast that Bob Barber and I did. It's still up there in live videos. Okay. I don't recommend watching all 8.5 hours.
No.
The last hour and a half, we were getting no new results. It just stopped at about 12:30. It stopped 12:30 Eastern time. We stopped getting updates on results on every single website. You name the news source, they stopped giving results. And even a couple times you would refresh and they would revert back to older results.
Interesting.
So something was going on there. We saw it and we said, this is not normal. Something has changed. Something has stopped. And we still were on the air for an hour and a half which apparently wasn't long enough, because an hour we went off after we went off the air was when the first 3 a.m. drop happened that gave, in Pennsylvania, Biden 300,000 votes and Trump 0.
Right. Man, that's crazy.
Which a mathematician, by the way, and a statistical analysis guy under oath in a court case said that is actually impossible to occur.
Yeah. Mathematically, that would
Mathematically
never
impossible.
happen. Yeah,
Right.
for sure. Wow, crazy. Okay, so what time are you going on tomorrow then? To start.
So tomorrow
Tell
night,
everybody here.
Yep. Tomorrow night, I'm going to be going through that spreadsheet so that everyone's going to be completely informed of where we are today and where the polls were in 2016, 2020, and what they are today, as well as going through all the Senate races. There's 33 of them. So we're going to talk about those. A lot of them we're just going to go through very quickly because they're going to be just no-brainers. And then we're going to go through the House races. I think we have about 50 of them that are toss-up or lean. They're basically not a sure thing. And certainly the 6 that are the key ones in California and in New York, that if they do flip, that's going to give control of the House to the Democrats. So tomorrow night we'll be on an hour before the first polls close, which is the polls close at 7 p.m. Eastern. So we'll be on at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain, and 3 p.m. Pacific. My channel is my name, Kevin Hook. So if you want to join us and learn about these things, about like where we're at with polls and all those things, you can turn in an hour before the first polls close. And if you just want to see the results and you don't want to listen to talking heads and you want to listen to people like me and Shane and Bob Barber and so forth, and give this election a biblical perspective, then you can start tuning in at 7 Eastern. And the first polls to close will be Georgia. Let me just read this. Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Virginia, and Vermont. So we're gonna show results coming in. I'm going to show that on here through a web page, just like kind of what I did with that Excel spreadsheet. We're going to show the Excel spreadsheet. We're going to be able to go back and forth on House, Senate, and presidential results that are coming in. And we're also going to be tuning in on YouTube to a couple of different places, probably not Fox, ABC, NBC, CNN, because who really cares to hear what those people have to say? I don't. Because
I like recording it. I like recording what they say, because when they're wrong, you can go back to it and go, see, this is exactly
the
what they were
meltdowns
saying.
will be fun to watch the day after. Absolutely. But to actually watch that in real time, it's just, it doesn't really matter. But we will be going to a couple of YouTube places like On Point Politics. They do polling, and they're really good at polling. They use the Atlas Intel method, which if you saw on that spreadsheet, Atlas Intel had the popular vote by 4.7, and he ended up winning by 4.5. I mean, they were only 0.2% off. So they were by far the most accurate pollster. Right now, they have Trump winning by 2 in the popular vote. Wow. So, yeah, it's going to be. We may tune in if Meltdown City starts to occur. We may actually tune into CBS and MSDNC in order to take a look at them. To see, you caught that, didn't you? Yeah. So we'll
watch the Meltdown live with some popcorn
and the Clown News Network, and we'll check them out and see what how their meltdowns are going. So we may do that just for a little Freudenfraud. But yeah, that's basically. So we're going to be on starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to go until it's over, and then our recap. So if it's never over, we're going to be on for a maximum of 20 hours until 1 p.m. the next day.
Wow. You're crazy. That's like a record or something, isn't it?
I don't know, but we're not. I can tell you this: we learned our lesson 4 years ago. We are not going to shut down early.
Yeah, no, it's true. I'm feeling the same thing. Honestly, I'm feeling the same thing. So
So Vegas, someone asked, what does Vegas have, Matt? You can't bet on political elections here in the United States. There is one place you actually can, but that's not, you can't actually bet on who's going to be the president. You can only bet on who's going to control the House, Republicans or Democrats. That's the only legal bet on one site in the United States in certain states. Like, for example, in Texas, it's illegal to make a bet.
Wow.
Period. You go down the street to your friend and say, hey, I'll bet you $1. Well, that's technically illegal. So,
wow.
Yeah, you
shocked.
cannot bet.
I thought you Americans would be betting on everything, including politics.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, no. But like, for example, people who make bets on Polymarket, they're all outside the United States. Now, could be some people VPNing, but you're supposed, it says that you agree you're not going to use a VPN. If you get caught, you're really screwed because that's like a federal violation. But but Polymarket right now has Trump at about 60 to 63% and Harris between 37 and 40.
Wow. Crazy. Well, brother, thank you for jumping on here. I appreciate your insight to this.
Yeah, you know, there is some fatigue going on here. I'm exhausted just listening to you two. I don't even want to watch tomorrow. Yeah, I get that. But you know what? Shane and I have a slightly different calling. We are called to be watchers. Yeah. And so we, even if we didn't want to or were exhausted, we would still be compelled within in order to do so. That's just who, that's how we make up part of the body of Christ. That's what we are. So we cannot deny that. Even if we attempted to, we'd be prodded back into doing it.
For sure. No,
it is just
keeping an eye on this. Yep, it is not for everybody, but the ones that are interested in this kind of thing, some people would rather go on here if we're talking about CNN or watching things on CNN or Fox or whatever, and then comment at the same time as we're going live. So people like that from home.
Right. I mean, the aggregate polling that people always talk about, they say, oh, the aggregate has, Harris up by 1 point or Trump up by 0.1 or whatever. Those aggregate polls have been skewed to the left. Election cycle 2016 and 2020 by between 2 and 4 points. So take the aggregate polling with a grain of salt. If they say that if the aggregate polling says that Kamala Harris is up by 1 point, due to their historical errors, Trump's actually up between 1 and 3.
Right.
See, that's what the news sites won't tell you. They just read the paper and they say the aggregate says 1 point, but they actually don't look into the adjusted polls based on weighting and so forth or historical errors and say, but due to that, it's most likely it's between 1 and 3 for Trump. They won't tell you those things.
Yeah,
so
which is what we want.
That Kamala Harris is up, or it's a real tight race when it actually isn't.
Right. No, that's good. Good stuff, brother. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. If you want to stick around in the back real quick, I'll just say bye to everyone. Bye, everyone. See you tomorrow. Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to Kevin's channel. And I'm thinking tomorrow is going to be a really big day. So we'll see you guys later in another video. Bye for now.
Black Swan Revelations here on YouTube brought you today's mind-bending journey. Dive into the discussion, your comments, questions, prayer requests, and powerful testimonies of Jesus' love are what fuel this community. Did today's episode hit home? Smash that like button. New here? Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a live stream or a video upload. Thanks for being part of today's adventure. Catch you in the next video, or maybe even in the clouds. Stay curious, stay blessed.